Hello, my loves. Hello, my children. And welcome to another Auntie Allison Reads You to Sleep ASMR video. With another Hunger Games reading video. I've done quite a few Hunger Games book readings. We've done, I think, 3 chapters of the first Hunger Games book, and my most recent reading video, I read chapter 1 of Catching Fire. That one I tried something different. I did more of a top-down view of the book, my hands flipping the pages for a little more visual ASMR. And I got like kind of mixed reviews on it. Some people liked it. They liked being able to follow along with the words on the screen. But a lot of people missed like seeing my face as I read the dialogue, you know, the different like expressions I do for characters and stuff. So we're going back to this format of me and the mic and the book and you listening, getting sleepy. But if you did want to, follow this book from the beginning, then I'll put a link to the video up here where I read chapter 1, because otherwise we're gonna be starting a chapter 2 and you might be like, what just happened? Although if you haven't read any of the first book, The Hunger Games, you're also gonna be deeply confused. Also, I just wanted to say, this is a new lipstick color. I just got it as a birthday gift. It's a ColourPop lippy. I've gotten a lot of, sorry, I've got hairs stuck to my face. I've gotten a lot of ColourPop lately, and this one is a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer themed lippy, and I believe the shade is called Rudolph. How funny is that? And it's got, oh my gosh, I don't know if you can see, it has like snowflakes printed into the side of the bullet. But yeah, this is what it looks like. It looks a lot redder on than it does in the bullet. Anyway, I just thought, for those of you who like makeup and you always ask like, what shade is that and stuff, I thought I'd tell you. Okay. Let's get into the reading. Let me find where we are. And today we're gonna read chapters 2 and chapters 3. So chapter 2 and 3 will be marked on the video timestamp timeline thing. So if you wanna skip ahead for whatever reason, you can do that. But otherwise, here is chapter 2 of Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins. In my mind, President Snow should be viewed in front of marble pillars hung with oversized flags. It's jarring to see him surrounded by the ordinary objects in the room, like taking the lid off a pot and finding a fanged viper instead of stew. What could we be doing here? My mind rushes back to the opening days of other victory tours. I remember seeing the winning tributes with their mentors and stylists. Even some high government officials have made appearances occasionally, but I have never seen President Snow. He attends celebrations in the capital, period. If he's made the journey all the way from his city, it can only mean one thing. I'm in serious trouble, and if I am, so is my family. A shiver goes through me when I think of the proximity of my mother and sister to this man who despises me, will always despise me, because I outsmarted his sadistic Hunger Games, made the capital look foolish, and consequently undermined his control. All I was doing was trying to keep PETA and myself alive, Any act of rebellion was purely coincidental. But when the Capitol decrees that only one tribute can live, and you have the audacity to challenge it, I guess that's a rebellion in itself. My only defense was pretending that I was driven insane by a passionate love for PETA. So we were both allowed to live, to be crowned victors, to go home and celebrate and wave goodbye to the cameras and be left alone. Until now. Perhaps it is the newness of the house, or the shock of seeing him, or the mutual understanding that he could have killed me in a second that makes me feel like the intruder, as if this is his home and I'm the uninvited party. So I don't welcome him or offer him a chair. I don't say anything. In fact, I treat him as if he's a real snake, the venomous kind. I stand motionless, my eyes locked on him, considering plans of retreat. I think we'll make this whole situation a lot simpler by agreeing not to lie to each other, he says. What do you think? I think my tongue is frozen and speech will be impossible, so I surprise myself by answering back in a steady voice. Yes, I think that will save some time. President Snow smiles, and I notice his lips for the first time. I'm expecting snake lips, which is to say none, but his are overly full, the skin stretched too tight. I have to wonder if his mouth has been altered to make him more appealing. If so, it was a waste of time and money because he's not appealing at all. My advisors were concerned you would be difficult. Well, you're not planning on being difficult, are you? He asks. No, I answer. That's what I told them. I said any girl who goes to such lengths to preserve her life isn't going to be interested in throwing it away with both hands. And then there's her family to think of. Her mother, her sister, and all those cousins. By the way he lingers on the word cousins, I can tell he knows that Gail and I don't share a family tree. Well, it's all on the table now. Maybe that's better. I don't do well with ambiguous threats. I'd much rather know the score. Let's sit. President Snow takes a seat at the large desk of polished wood, where Prim does her homework and my mother her budgets. Like our home, this is a place that he has no right, but ultimately every right, to occupy. I sit in front of the desk on one of the carved straight-back chairs. It's made for someone taller than I am, so only my toes rest on the ground. I have a problem, Miss Everdeen, says President Snow. A problem that began the moment you pulled out those poisonous berries in the arena. That was the moment that when I guessed that if the game makers had to choose between watching PETA and me commit suicide, which would mean having no victor and letting us both live, they would take the latter. If the head game maker, Seneca Crane, had had any brains, he'd have blown you to dust right then, but he had an unfortunate sentimental streak. So here you are. Can you guess where he is? He asks. I nod because, by the way he says it, it's clear that Seneca Crane has been executed. The smell of roses and blood has grown stronger now that only a desk separates us. There's a rose in President Snow's lapel, which at least suggests a source of the flower perfume, but it must be genetically enhanced because no real rose reeks like that. As for the blood, I don't know. After that, there was nothing to do but let you play out your little scenario. And you were pretty good, too, with the love-crazed schoolgirl bit. The people in the Capitol were quite convinced. Unfortunately, not everyone in the districts fell for your act, he says. My face must register at least a flicker of bewilderment because he addresses it. This, of course, you don't know. You have no access to information about the mood in other districts. In several of them, however, people viewed your little trick with the berries as an act of defiance. Not an act of love. And if a girl from District 12, of all places, can defy the Capitol and walk away unharmed, what is to stop them from doing the same? He asks. What is to prevent, say, an uprising? It takes a moment for his last sentence to sink in, then the full weight of it hits me. There have been uprisings? I ask, both chilled and somewhat elated by the possibility. Not yet, but they'll follow if the course of things doesn't change, and uprisings have been known to lead to revolution. President Snow rubs a spot over his left eyebrow, the very spot where I myself get headaches. Do you have any idea what that would mean? How many people would die? What conditions those left would have to face? Whatever problems anyone may have with the capital, believe me when I say that if I released its grip on the districts for even a short time, the entire system would collapse. I'm taken aback by the directness and even the sincerity of this speech, as if his primary concern is the welfare of the citizens of Panem, when nothing could be further from the truth. I don't know how I dare to say the next words, but I do. It must be very fragile, if a handful of berries can bring it down. There's a long pause while he examines me. Then he simply says, "It is fragile, but not in the way that you suppose." There's a knock at the door and the capital man sticks his head in. "Her mother wants to know if you want tea." I would like tea," says the president. The door opens wider, and there stands my mother, holding a tray with a china tea set she brought to the seam when she married. "Set it here, please." He places his book on the corner of the desk and pats the center. My mother sets the tray on the desk. It holds a china teapot and cups, cream and sugar, and a plate of cookies. They're beautifully iced with softly colored flowers. The frosting work can only be pitas. What a welcome sight. You know, it's funny how often people forget that presidents need to eat too, President Snow says charmingly. Well, it seems to relax my mother a bit anyway. "Can I get you anything else? I can cook something more substantial if you're hungry," she offers. "No, this could not be more perfect, thank you," he says, clearly dismissing her. My mother nods, shoots me a glance, and goes. President Snow pours tea for both of us and fills us with cream and sugar, then takes a long time stirring. I sense he's had his say, and is waiting for me to respond. "I didn't mean to start any uprisings," I tell him. "I believe you. It doesn't matter. Your stylist turned out to be prophetic in his wardrobe choice. Katniss Everdeen, the girl who was on fire. You've provided a spark that, left unattended, may grow to an inferno that destroys Panem," he says. "Why don't you just kill me now?" I blurt out. "Publicly?" he asks. "That would only add fuel to the flames." "Arrange an accident then," I say. "Who would buy it?" he asks. "Not you, if you were watching." "Then just tell me what you want me to do. I'll do it," I say. If only it were that simple. He picks up one of the floured cookies and examines it. "Lovely. Your mother make these?" "Pita." And for the first time I find I can't hold his gaze. I reach for my tea but set it back down when I hear the cup rattling against the saucer. To cover, I quickly take a cookie. "Pita. How is the love of your life?" he asks. "Good," I say. "At what point did he realize the exact degree of your indifference?" he asks, dipping his cookie in the tea. "I'm not indifferent," I say. "But perhaps not as taken with the young man as you would have the country believe," he says. "Who says I'm not?" I say. "I do," says the president, "and I wouldn't be here if I were the only person who had doubts. How's the handsome cousin?" I don't know. I don't. My revulsion at this conversation, at discussing my feelings for two of the people I care most about with President Snow, chokes me off. "Speak, Miss Everdeen. Him I can easily kill off if we don't come to a happy resolution," he says. "You aren't doing him a favor by disappearing into the woods with him each Sunday. If he knows this, what else could he know? And how does he know it? Many people could tell him that Gail and I spend our Sundays hunting. Don't we show up at the end of each one loaded down with game? Haven't we for years? The real question is, what he thinks goes on in the woods beyond District 12. Surely they haven't been tracking us in there. Or have they? Could we have been followed? That seems impossible, at least by a person. Cameras? That never crossed my mind until this moment. The woods have always been our place of safety, our place beyond the reach of the capital, where we're free to say what we feel, be who we are. At least before the games. If we've been watched since, what have they seen? 2 people hunting, saying treasonous things against the capital, yes, but not 2 people in love, which seems to be President Snow's implication. We are safe on that charge. Unless it only happened once. It was fast and unexpected, but it did happen. After Peter and I got home from the games, it was several weeks before I saw Gail alone. First there were the obligatory celebrations, a banquet for the victors that only the most high-ranking people were invited to, a holiday for the whole district of free food and entertainers brought in from the capital, Parcel Day, the first of 12, in which food packages were delivered to every person in the district. That was my favorite. See all those hungry kids in the seam running around, waving cans of applesauce, tins of meat, even candy. Back home, too big to carry, would be bags of grain, cans of oil. To know that once a month for a year, they would all receive another parcel. That was one of the few times I actually felt good about winning the games. So between the ceremonies and events and the reporters documenting my every move as I presided and thanked and kissed PETA for the audience, I had no privacy at all. After a few weeks, things finally died down. Camera crews and the reporters packed up and went home. PETA and I assumed the cool relationship we've had ever since. My family settled into our house in the Victor's Village. The everyday life of District 12, workers to the mines, kids to the school, resumed its usual pace. I waited until I thought the coast was really clear, and then one Sunday, without telling anyone, I got up hours before dawn and took off for the woods. The weather was still warm enough that I didn't need a jacket. I packed along a bag filled with special foods, cold chicken and cheese and bakery bread and oranges. Down in my old house, I put on my hunting boots. As usual, the fence was not charged and it was easy to slip into the woods and retrieve my bow and arrows. I went to our place, Gail's and mine, where we had shared breakfast the morning of the reaping that sent me into the games. I waited at least 2 hours. I'd begun to think that he'd given up on me in the weeks that had passed, or that he no longer cared about me, hated me even, and the idea of losing him forever, my best friend, the only person I'd ever trusted of my secrets, was so painful I couldn't stand it. Not on top of everything else that had happened. I could feel my eyes tearing up and my throat starting to close the way it does when I get upset. Then I looked up, and there he was, 10 feet away, just watching me. Without even thinking, I jumped up and threw my arms around him, making some weird sound that combined laughing, choking, and crying. He was holding me so tightly that I couldn't see his face, but it was a really long time before he let me go. And then he didn't have much choice because I'd gotten this unbelievably loud case of the hiccups and had to get a drink. We did what we always did that day. Ate breakfast, hunted and fished and gathered, talked about people in town. But not about us, his new life in the mines, my time in the arena, and just about other things. By the time we were at the hole in the fence that's nearest the hob, I think I really believed that things could be the same, that we could go on as we always had. I'd given all the game to Gail to trade since we had so much food now. I told him I'd skip the hob, even though I was looking forward to going there because my mother and sister didn't even know I'd gone hunting, and they'd be wondering where I was. Then suddenly, as I was suggesting I take over the daily snare run, he took my face in his hands and kissed me. I was completely unprepared. You would think that after all the hours I'd spent with Gail, watching him talk and laugh and frown, that I would know all there was to know about his lips. That I hadn't imagined how warm they would feel pressed against my own, or how those hands, which could set the most intricate of snares, could as easily entrap me. think I made some sort of noise in the back of my throat, and I vaguely remember my fingers, curled tightly, closed, resting on his chest. Then he let go and said, "I had to do that, at least once." And he was gone. Despite the fact that the sun was setting and my family would be worried, I sat by a tree next to the fence. I tried to decide how I felt about the kiss, if I liked it or resented it. But all I really remembered was the pressure of Gail's lips and the scent of the oranges that still lingered on his skin. It was pointless comparing it with the many kisses I'd exchanged with Peter. I still hadn't figured out if any of those counted. Finally, I went home. And that week, I'd managed the snares and dropped off the meat with Hazel, but I didn't see Gail until Sunday. I had this whole speech worked out about how I didn't want a boyfriend and I never planned on marrying, but I didn't end up using it. Gail acted as if the kiss had never happened. Maybe he was just waiting for me to say something, or kiss him back. Instead, I just pretended it had never happened, either. But it had. Gail had shattered some invisible barrier between us, and with it, any hope I had of resuming our old, uncomplicated friendship. Whatever I pretended, I could never look at his lips in quite the same way. This all flashes through my head in an instant as President Snow's eyes bore into me on the heels of his threat to kill Gail. How stupid I've been to think the Capitol would just ignore me once I'd returned home. Maybe I didn't know about the potential uprisings, but I knew they were angry with me. Instead of acting with the extreme caution the situation called for, what have I done? From the president's point of view, I've ignored PETA and flaunted my preference for Gail's company before the whole district, and by doing so made it clear I was, in fact, mocking the Capitol. Now I've endangered Gail and his family, and my family, and PETA too, by my carelessness. "Please don't hurt Gail," I whisper. "He's just my friend. He's been my friend for years. That's all that's between us. Besides, everyone thinks we're cousins now. I'm only interested in how it affects your dynamic with PETA, thereby affecting the mood in the districts," he says. "It will be the same on the tour. I'll be in love with him just as I was," I say. "Just as you are," corrects President Snow. "Just as I am," I confirm. "Only you'll have to do even better if the uprisings are to be averted," he says. "This tour will be your only chance to turn things around." "I know, I will. I'll convince everyone in the districts that I wasn't to find the Capitol, that I was crazy with love," I say. President Snow rises and dabs his puffy lips with a napkin. "Aim higher, in case you fall short." "What do you mean? How can I aim higher?" I ask. "Convince me," he says. He drops the napkin and retrieves his book. I don't watch him as he heads for the door, so I flinch when he whispers in my ear, "By the way, I know about the kiss." Then the door clicks shut behind him. Chapter 3. The smell of blood is on his breath. What does he do, I think? Drink it? I imagine him sipping it from a teacup, dipping a cookie into the stuff and pulling it out dripping red. Outside the window, a car comes to life, soft and quiet like the purr of a cat, then fades away into the distance. It slips off as it arrived, unnoticed. The room seems to be spinning in slow, lopsided circles, and I wonder if I might black out. I lean forward and clutch the desk with one hand. The other still holds Peter's beautiful cookie. I think it had a tiger lily on it, but now it's been reduced to crumbs in my fist. I didn't even know I was crushing it, but I guess I had to hold on to something when my world veered out of control. A visit from President Snow. Districts on the verge of uprisings. A direct death threat to Gail, with others to follow. Everyone I love doomed. And who knows who else will pay for my actions, unless I turn things around on the store. Quiet the discontent and put the president's mind at rest. And how? By proving to the country, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that I love Peter Malark. I can't do it, I think. I'm not that good. Peter's the good one, the likable one. He can make people believe anything. I'm the one who shuts up and sits back and lets him do as much of the talking as possible. But it isn't Peter who has to prove his devotion. It's me. I hear my mother's light, quick tread in the hall. She can't know, I think. Not about any of this. I reach my hands over the tray, quickly brush bits of cookie from my palm and fingers. Take a shaky sip of my tea. Is everything all right, Katniss? She asks. It's fine. We never see it on television, but the president always visits the victors before the tour to wish them luck, I say brightly. My mother's face flooded with relief. Oh, I thought there was some kind of trouble. No, not at all, I say. The trouble will start when my prep team sees how I've let my eyebrows grow back in. My mother laughs, and I think about how there was no going back after I took over caring for the family when I was 11. How I will always have to protect her. Why don't I start your bath? She asks. Great, I say, and I can see how pleased she is by my response. Since I've been home, I've been trying hard to mend my relationship with my mother. Asking her to do things for me instead of brushing aside any offer of help as I did for years out of anger. Letting her handle all the money I won, and returning her hugs instead of tolerating them. My time in the arena made me realize how I needed to stop punishing her for something she couldn't help, specifically the crushing depression she fell into after my father's death. Because sometimes things happen to people and they're not equipped to deal with them. Like me, for instance, right now. Besides this one wonderful thing she did when I arrived back in the district. After our families and friends had greeted Peeta and me at the train station, there were a few questions allowed from reporters. Someone asked my mother what she thought of my new boyfriend, and she replied that, while Peeta was the very model of what a young man should be, I wasn't old enough to have any boyfriend at all. She followed this with a pointed look to Peeta. There was a lot of laughter and comments like, "Somebody's in trouble," from the press, and Peeta dropped my hand and sidestepped away from me. That didn't last long. There was too much pressure to act otherwise, but he gave us an excuse to be a little more reserved than we'd been in the Capitol. And maybe it can help account for how little I've been seen in Peeta's company since the cameras left. I go upstairs to the bathroom where a steaming tub awaits. My mother has added a small bag of dried flowers that perfumes the air. None of us are used to the luxury of turning on a tap and having a limitless supply of hot water at our fingertips. We had only cold at our home and in the seam, and a bath meant boiling the rest over the fire. I undress and lower myself into the silky water. My mother's poured in some kind of oil as well. I try to get a grip on things. The first question is who to tell, if anyone. Not my mother or Prim, obviously. They'd only become sick with worry. Not Gale. Even if I could get word to him. What would he do with the information anyway? If he were alone, I might try to persuade him to run away. Certainly he could survive in the woods. But he's not alone. And he'd never leave his family. Or me. When I get home, I'll have to tell him something about why our Sundays are a thing of the past, but I can't think about that now. Only about my next move. Besides, Gil's already so angry and frustrated with the Capitol that I sometimes think he's gonna arrange his own uprising. Last thing he needs is an incentive. No, I can't tell anyone I'm leaving behind in District 12. There are still 3 people I might confide in, starting with Cinna, my stylist. But my guess is Cinna might already be at risk, and I don't want to pull him into any more trouble by closer association with me. Then there's Peeta, who will be my partner in this deception. How do I begin that conversation? Hey Peeta, remember how I told you I was kind of faking being in love with you? Well, I really need you to forget about that now and act extra in love with me, or the president might kill Gale. I can't do it. Besides, Peeta will perform well, whether he knows what's at stake or not. That leaves Haymitch. Drunken, cranky, confrontational Haymitch, who I just poured a basin of ice water on. As my mentor in the games, it was his duty to keep me alive. I only hope he's still up for the job. I slide down into the water, letting it block out the sounds around me. I wish the tub would expand so I could go swimming, like I used to on hot summer Sundays in the woods with my father. Those days were a special treat. We would leave early in the morning and hike farther into the woods than usual to a small lake he'd found while hunting. I don't even remember learning how to swim. I was so young when he taught me. I just remember diving, turning somersaults, paddling around the muddy bottom of the lake beneath my toes. The smell of blossoms and greenery, floating on my back as I am now, staring at the blue sky while the chatter of the woods was muted by the water. He'd bag the waterfowl that nested around the shore, I'd hunt for eggs in the grasses, and we'd both dig for katniss roots, the plant for which he named me, in the shallows. At night when we got home, my mother would pretend not to recognize me because I was so clean. Then she'd cook up an amazing dinner of roasted duck and baked katniss tubers with gravy. I never took Gil to the lake. I could have. It's time-consuming to get there, but the waterfowl are such easy pickings you can make up for lost hunting time. It's a place I've never really wanted to share with anyone, though. A place that belonged only to my father and me. Since the games, when I've had little to occupy my days, I've gone there a couple times. The swimming was still nice, but mostly the visits depressed me. Over the course of the last 5 years, the lake's remarkably unchanged, and I'm almost unrecognizable. Even underwater, I can hear the sounds of commotion. Honking car horns, shouts of greeting, doors banging shut. It can only mean my entourage has arrived. I have just time to towel off and slip into a robe before my prep team bursts into the bathroom. There's no question of privacy. When it comes to my body, we have no secrets, these 3 people and me. Katniss, your eyebrows! Venia shrieks right off, and even with the black cloud hanging over me, I have to stifle a laugh. Her aqua hair has been styled so nice that it sticks out in sharp points all over her head, and the gold tattoos that used to be confined above her brows have curled around under her eyes, all contributing to the impression that I've literally shocked her. Octavia comes up and pats Venia's back soothingly, her curvy body looking plumper than usual next to Venia's thin, angular one. There, you can fix those in no time. But what am I going to do with those nails? She grabs my hand and pins it flat between her 2 pea-green ones. No, her skin isn't exactly pea-green now. It's more of a light evergreen. The shift in shade is no doubt an attempt to stay abreast of the capricious fashion trends of the capital. Really, Katniss, you could have left me something to work with, she wails. It's true. I've bitten my nails to stubs in the past couple of months. I thought about trying to break the habit, but couldn't think of a good reason I should. Sorry, I mutter. I hadn't really been spending much time worrying about how it might affect my prep team. Flavius lifts a few strands of my wet, tangled hair. He gives his head a disapproving shake, causing his orange corkscrew curls to bounce around. Has anyone touched this since you last saw us? He asks sternly. Remember, we specifically asked you to leave your hair alone. Yes, I say, grateful that I can chill. I haven't totally taken them for granted. I mean, no one's cut it. I did remember that. No, I didn't. It's more like the issue never came up. Since I've been home, all I've done is stick it in a usual braid down my back. This seems to mollify them, and he'll kiss me, set me in a chair in my bedroom, and as usual start talking non-stop without bothering to notice if I'm listening. While Venia reinvents my eyebrows, and Octavia gave me fake nails, and Flavius massages goo into my hair, I hear all about the capital. What a hit the games were, how dull things have been since, how no one can wait until Peeta and I visit again at the end of the victory tour. After that, it won't be long before the capital begins gearing up for the quarter quell. Isn't it thrilling? Don't you feel so lucky? In your very first year of being a victor, you get to be a mentor in a quarter quell. Their words overlap in a blur of excitement. Oh, yes, I say neutrally. It's the best I can do. In a normal year, being a mentor to the tributes is the stuff of nightmares. I can't walk by the school now without wondering what kid I'll have to coach. But to make things even worse, this is the year of the 75th Hunger Games, and that means it's also a quarter quell. They occur every 25 years, marking the anniversary of the district's defeat with over-the-top celebrations, and, for extra fun, some miserable twist for the tributes. I've never been alive for one, of course, but in school I remember hearing that for the second quarter quell, the capital demanded that twice the number of tributes be provided for the arena. The teachers didn't go into much more detail, which is surprising because that was the year District 12's very own Hamish Abernathy won the crown. Hamish better be preparing himself for a lot of attention, squeals Octavia. Hamish has never mentioned his personal experience in the arena to me. I would never ask, and if I ever saw his games televised in reruns, I must have been too young to remember it. But the capital won't let him forget it this year. In a way, it's a good thing Peeta and I will both be available as mentors during the quell, because it's a sure bet that Hamish will be wasted. After they've exhausted the topic of the quarter quell, my prep team launches into a whole lot of stuff about their incomprehensibly silly lives. Who said what, about what someone I've never heard of, and what sort of shoes they just bought, and a long story from Octavia about what a mistake it was to have everyone wear feathers to her birthday party. Soon, my brows are stinging, my hair smooth and silky, and my nails are ready to be painted. Apparently they've been given instruction to prepare only my hands and my face, because everything else will be covered in the cold weather. Flavius badly wants to use his own trademark purple lipstick on me, but resigns himself to a pink as they begin to color my face and nails. I can see by the palette Cinna has assigned we're going for girlish, not sexy. Good. I'll never convince anyone of anything if I'm trying to be provocative. Hamish made that very clear when he was coaching me for my interview for the games. My mother comes in somewhat shyly and says that Cinna has asked her to show the preps how she did my hair the day of the reaping. They respond with enthusiasm and then watch, thoroughly engrossed, as she breaks down the process of the elaborate braided hairdo. In the mirror, I can see their earnest faces following her every move, their eagerness when it's their turn to try a step. In fact, all three are so readily respectful and nice to my mother that I feel bad about how I go around feeling so superior to them. Who knows who I would be, or what I would talk about if I'd been raised in the capital. Maybe my biggest regret would be having feathered costumes at my birthday party too. When my hair is done, I find Cinna downstairs in the living room, and just the sight of him makes me feel more hopeful. He looks the same as always. Simple clothes, short brown hair, just a hint of gold eyeliner. We embrace, and I can barely keep from spilling out the entire episode of President Snow, but no. I've decided to tell Hamish first. He'll know best who to burden with it. So easy to talk to Cinna, though. Lately we've been speaking a lot on the telephone that came with the house. It's sort of a joke because almost no one else knows we own one. There's Peeta, but obviously I don't call him. Hamish tore his out of the wall years ago. My friend Madge, the mayor's daughter, has a telephone in her house, but if we want to talk, we do it in person. At first the thing barely ever got used. Then Cinna started to call to work on my talent. Every Victor is supposed to have one. Your talent is the activity you take up, since you don't have to work either in school or your district's industry. It can be anything, really. Anything that they can interview you about. Peeta, it turns out, actually has a talent, which is painting. He's been frosting those cakes and cookies for years in his family's bakery. But now that he's rich, he can afford to smear real paint on canvases. I don't have a talent, unless you count hunting illegally, which they don't. Or maybe singing, which I wouldn't do for the capital in a million years. My mother tried to interest me in a variety of suitable alternatives from a list Evie Trinket sent her. Cooking, flower arranging, playing the flute. None of them took, although Prim had a knack for all three. Finally, Cinna stepped in and offered to help me develop my passion for designing clothes, which really required development since it was non-existent. But I said yes, because it meant getting to talk to Cinna, and he promised he'd do all the work. Now he's arranging things around my living room. Clothing, fabrics and sketchbooks and examine a dress I supposedly created. You know, I think I show a lot of promise, I say. Get dressed, you worthless thing, he says, tossing a bundle of clothes at me. I may have no interest in designing clothes, but I do love the ones Cinna makes for me. Like these, flowing black pants made out of a thick, warm material, a comfortable white shirt, a sweater woven from green and blue and gray strands of kitten soft wool, lace leather boots that don't pinch my toes. Did I design my outfit? I ask. No, you aspire to design your outfit and be like me, your fashion hero, says Cinna. He hands me a small stack of clothes. You'll read these off camera while they're filming the clothes. Try to sound like you care. Just then, Effie Trinket arrives in a pumpkin orange wig to remind everyone, we're on a schedule. She kisses me on both cheeks while waving in the camera crew, then orders me into position. Effie is the only reason we got anywhere on time in the Capitol, so I try to accommodate her. I start bobbing around like a puppet, holding up outfits and saying meaningless things like, don't you love it? The sound team records me reading from my cards in a chirpy voice so they can insert it later. Then I'm tossed out of the room so they can film my/Cinna's designs in peace. Prim got out early from school for the event. Now she stands in the kitchen, being interviewed by another crew. She looks lovely, in a sky blue frock that brings out her eyes, her blonde hair pulled back in a matching ribbon. She's leaning a bit forward on the toes of her shiny white boots, like she's about to take flight. Like, bam. It's like someone actually hits me in the chest. No one has, of course. But the pain is so real. I take a step back. I squeeze my eyes shut, and I don't see Prim. I see Rue, the 12-year-old girl from District 11 who was my ally in the arena. She could fly, bird-like, from tree to tree, catching onto the slenderest branches. Rue, who I didn't save, who I let die. I picture her lying on the ground with the spear still wedged in her stomach. Who else will I fail to save from the Capitol's vengeance? Who else will be dead if I don't satisfy President Snow? I realize Cinna's trying to put a coat on me, so I raise my arms. I feel fur inside and out, encasing me. It's from no animal I've ever seen. Ermine, he tells me as I stroke the white sleeve. Leather gloves, a bright red scarf, something furry that covers my ears. You're bringing earmuffs back in style. I hate earmuffs, I think. They make it hard to hear, and since I was blasted to death in one ear in the arena, I dislike them even more. After I won, the Capitol repaired my ear, but I still find myself testing it. My mother hurries up with something cupped in her hand. For good luck, she says. It's the pin Madge gave me before I left for the games. A mockingjay flying in a circle of gold. I tried to give it to Rue, but she wouldn't take it. She said the pin was the reason she decided to trust me. Cinna fixes it on the knot in my scarf. Effie Trinket's nearby, clapping her hands. Attention, everyone! We're about to do our first outdoor shot where the victors greet each other at the beginning of their marvelous trip. Alright, Katniss, big smile. You're very excited, right? I don't exaggerate when I say she shoves me out the door. For a moment I can't see right because of the snow, which is now coming down in earnest. Then I make out Peeta coming through his front door. In my head I hear President Snow's directive. Convince me. And I know I must. My face breaks into a huge smile, and I start walking in Peeta's direction. Then, as if I can't stand it another second, I start running. He catches me and spins me around, and then he slips. He still isn't entirely in command of his artificial leg. And we fall into the snow, me on top of him. And that's where we have our first kiss in months. It's full of fur and snowflakes and lipstick, but underneath all that, I can feel the steadiness that Peeta brings to everything. And I know I'm not alone. As badly as I've hurt him, he won't expose me in front of the cameras, won't condemn me with a half-hearted kiss. He's still looking out for me, just as he did in the arena. Somehow the thought makes me want to cry. Instead, I pull him to his feet, tuck my glove through the crook of his arm, and merrily pull him on our way. The rest of the day is a blur of getting to the station, bidding everyone goodbye, the train pulling out, the old team, Peta and me, Effie and Hamish, Senna and Portia, Peta's stylist, dining on an indescribably delicious meal I don't remember. And then I'm swathed in pajamas and a voluminous robe, sitting in my plush compartment, waiting for the others to go to sleep. I know Hamish will be up for hours. He doesn't like to sleep when it's dark out. When the train seems quiet, I put on my slippers and pad down to his door. I have to knock several times before he answers, scowling, as if he's certain I've brought bad news. "What do you want?" he says, nearly knocking me out with a cloud of wine fumes. "I have to talk to you," I whisper. "Now?" he says. I nod. "This better be good." He waits, but I feel certain every word we utter on a capital train is being recorded. "Well?" he barks. The train starts to break, and for a second I think Presence Note is watching me and doesn't approve of my confiding in Hamish and has decided to go ahead and kill me now. But we're just stopping for fuel. "The train's so stuffy," I say. It's a harmless phrase, but I see Hamish's eyes narrow in understanding. "I know what you need." He pushes past me and lurches down the hall to a door. When he wrestles it open, a blast of snow hits us. He trips out onto the ground. A capital attendant rushes to help, but Hamish waves her off good-naturedly as he staggers off. "Just want to get some fresh air. Only be a minute." "Sorry, he's drunk," I say apologetically. "I'll get him." I hop down and stumble along the track behind him, soaking my slippers with snow, as he leads me beyond the end of the train so I'll not be overheard. Then he turns on me. "What?" I tell him everything. About the president's visit, about Gale, about how we're all going to die if I fail. His face sobers, grows older in the glow of the red taillights. "Then you can't fail." "If you could just help me get through this trip," I begin. "No, Katniss, it's not just this trip," he says. "What do you mean?" I say. "Even if you pull it off, they'll be back in another few months to take us all to the games. You and Peta. You'll be mentors now, every year from here on out. And every year they'll revisit the romance and broadcast the details of your private life. And you'll never, ever be able to do anything but live happily ever after with that boy." The full impact of what he's saying hits me. I'll never have a life with Gale, even if I want to. I will never be allowed to live alone. I will have to forever be in love with Peta. The capital will insist on it. I'll have a few years, maybe, because I'm still only 16, to stay with my mother and Prim. And then, "Do you understand what I mean?" he presses me. I nod. He means there's only one future. If I want to keep those I love alive and stay alive myself, I'll have to marry Peta. That was chapter 3. We're 44 pages into Catching Fire. What do you think? I really like this book. I think it's really, really, really good. If you haven't read it, I won't say anything for spoilers, but it makes me kind of want to read the whole thing right now. But I'm reading Crescent City, The House of Sky and Breath right now, and it's a chunky book. And then I have another chunky book, which I'll just grab. I have to read this next. The third book. It's so beautiful. It's so pretty. House of Flame and Shadow. And look at that one. That is a thick book. So I have a lot to read. I really shouldn't be rereading The Hunger Games, but they're really good books. They're really great, and I absolutely love reading them with you all. So as I say, pretty much in every reading video, but I'll go ahead and explain it again for those who maybe aren't aware. I can't read too much of anything because audiobooks exist, and me reading these books out loud is kind of like a bootleg audiobook, I guess. It could be construed that way, and I don't want to get in trouble. You don't want me to get in trouble, so I read just a little bit of every of books, and I get a lot of people asking, can you read some old books that are no longer under like copyright and stuff like that? Yes, I can. However, I don't have any physical copies of those books, and I like to read a physical book with you all, so I can turn the page, so I can scan, and I don't know, it's just a little more ASMR-y, a little more relaxing, I think, when you read from a physical book. You should hold the book I actually just read. You know what I mean? It reminds me a little bit more of when you're a kid and someone does story time with you, having it in front of you. So, if I pick up, say, a book of old short stories or some classic works, then I can definitely do like a full volume or a full work or a series where we do a few videos. Sorry, my hair's crazy today. Covering the whole book. But as it stands with these more modern books, with modern audiobooks, I only read a few chapters so I don't get in trouble. So it means that we're probably gonna stop here for Catching Fire. I do have Mockingjay, so if you really like me reading the Hunger Games series, leave a like and tell me in the comments, yes, we want Mockingjay, and if this video does well enough, then I'll do it. Yeah. I also have New Moon. I could read a little more Twilight, or read New Moon. I also have Crescent City, but that book's kind of adult. I'm trying to read a slightly more family friendly, and young adult is a lot more family friendly, even if Hunger Games tackles some pretty sensitive subjects. At least the language is relatively young. There's a lot of F-bombs in Crescent City, so I don't think I'd read that one. I never, swear in my ASMR videos. And I don't want to start now, because I want to keep this pretty family friendly. I do swear in real life, just so you know. I think a lot of people are under the assumption that I'm just like this outside of ASMR, but I'm not. I am louder, and I swear, and yeah. Other than that, it's pretty similar, but I hope you enjoyed this video with my ASMR shirt, bringing you extra ASMR vibes, and thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you feel nice and sleepy and relaxed now. If you're about to head off to sleep, then I'll wish you a night-night, sleep tight. Don't let the bugs bite. Don't let President Snow bite. Or if you're just continuing on your day, then have a great rest of your day, and I hope it's a relaxing day at that. So, anything else? Oh, if you like the reading videos, and like maybe this is the first one that you've seen, I have a whole playlist full of others of me reading Twilight, of me reading Hunger Games, a few chapters, me reading the first chapter of Catching Fire, Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief, and then I've done like some works by Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven. I've also read a bunch of Skyrim books, stories, but those are not filmed like this. That's like the books on the page, and then I turn the page and I do ear to ear reading, because they're not like physical books, they're in the video game. So if you like the reading, I've got lots more hours more reading content for you. Yeah, I will put the link to that playlist I've made, my reading videos, in the description, and also a link to the previous chapter of Catching Fire specifically. Okay, leave a like or a comment to help the algorithm, or tell me that you want more Mockingjay, and subscribe if you're not subscribed. I should say it soft-spoken, so that if you're not subscribed, you see the little thing glow. Subscribe to my channel for more ASMR. That sounded so disingenuous. I'm so sorry. I do care if you subscribe. I just sound funny, or I feel funny being like, subscribe, and okay, I need to go because this is a mess. Go to sleep. Stay cozy. I'll talk to you in another video.